Howdy YouTubes. We're doing a bit of work on the old Prius today. Unfortunately it cacked out the other day with the old Dragon driving home, and it was a bit of an odd fault. I had seen something similar before, but it wasn't this bad. Anyway, I'll flip you around and show you what's going on. Now, I haven't put it all back together yet. I did rectify the problem because it was on the side of the road, and with these things you cannot get them into neutral if you can't get an ignition circuit. So I'll show you what happened. So she was driving along and it just died. The gear selector light on the dash came up as neutral and it coasted off the side, and she was able to get it off the side of the road, but that was it. She was stuck. So we've had a bit of an issue recently with the standard issue with the MCU, or the instrument cluster. There's a capacitor in there that's faulty, that when that goes out, has communication failure points. So it doesn't communicate with the gateway, and when that happens, you lose all the dash. Most of the lights don't come up. Only the engine light will come up if there's a fault with the engine light. And it will still drive. We've had a few times where she's pulled up and was unable to turn it off. It wasn't seeing the power selector switch. So that's another fault altogether. This one here, I'll just show you. I've got the key in, and then foot on the brake, push the power button, and you see everything flashes up. I'll do it again. Okay, it just flashes and turns off. So I did a bit of YouTubies searching on the side of the road. It was pretty dark and pretty late, so I just sort of started throwing things apart and testing things. The battery is fine. This similar scenario can manifest with a flat battery. One of the things is, the green power light doesn't always come on. A lot of the time it starts to flash orange. Okay, like this. The orange flashing power light indicates that there's an issue with the 12-volt battery system. Okay, that's one thing that it could be, is a flat battery. When you start looking into it, they say the fuses, IG1, IG2, there's a fuse panel under the dash, and that's these fuses here. So I did check the IG and engine, so ECU fuses, because it indicated it could be IGN, IG1, IG2. Okay, that's ignition source, or ECU. There's two ECU fuses, ECU B and ECU A, or ECU 1G, IG, sorry, up here. You probably can't really see that too well, but I'll just slow this down so that you can check it if you need to. So that can promote a similar thing where the instrument cluster does not illuminate. Okay, but in this situation, that's not it. So it was the very last thing I found, said that in the engine bay, here, we've got our relay cluster, and you can see this fuse is missing here. Okay, that is the AM2 fuse. The AM2 fuse is responsible for a few things. So when I plugged the scan tool in, and the scan tool came up with C1214 fault, which is to do with the skid, anti-skid system. Okay, this is also related to the pump. Okay, the coolant pump for the inverter is part of that circuit. So at the time I didn't have any spare 15 amp fuses, so I put a 30 amp fuse in it to get it around the block, and then pulled up and took it back out. So now I'll put this fuse back in. So I just had that out to replicate a blown fuse, same thing. Put that back in. Now when we went to restart it the other day, it came up with a whole stack of faults. So let's see if it's going to do that. No, that's all clear. Okay, oh no, yeah. So everything's good there. Just got the seatbelt light on. Okay, so AM2 fuse, very simple fix. It could be a few things. It could be that the coolant pump is crook for the inverter system, and that will need replacing. Plenty of them available here in Australia, at least for about $50 Australian. So conversion wise, it could be anything from 25 to 50 bucks American, or 25 euros or whatever it might be. Okay, so it's a pretty simple job. It's a little bit involved, but it's not too bad. But otherwise, that AM2 fuse also does your traction control system, basically the skid control. So if there's a fault with your ABS system or something like that, you may see that that fuse blow. So obviously, replacing the fuse is the quick and simple thing. Finding out why it blew is the hardest part. So this car's had a recent pump replaced, so that's not the problem at all. I've tested it. I've tested the skid control unit and everything else. So we don't have a heavy load, which could also then come back to if those loadings were up closer to threshold and the battery voltage dropped, then that spikes the current, which could blow that fuse. What I did find is that I've recently put a dodgy active subwoofer in this car, and I hadn't mounted it. So what had actually happened is, as she's come around the roundabout, that's disconnected and shorted itself out, which has then dropped the voltage to the car, causing all sorts of spikes and issues everywhere. And that was one of the main things that's stayed on that side. So it pays to do your job properly. Just because it's your own car doesn't mean you should cut corners. Anyway, lesson learned by myself. So very simple job. It's not obviously something that you can do on the side of the road, providing that issue is resolved. So if you were to plug in a new fuse and it blew almost straight away, then you can disconnect that pump and be able to drive it a short distance, whether it might be just getting it on a tow truck even, because you don't really want to call a tow truck and have them drag your car up onto the tabletop and then also cause so much stress on the transmission. Being a synergy drive electric motor coupling type planetary transmission, it can do quite a lot of damage. You wouldn't drive along and jam your car in park. Same story with this. So unfortunately you need to be able to restore ignition power to be able to get the car into neutral, and in this situation, if that was the problem and the pump was gone, because that's a very, very common thing, to the point where I've heard a lot of Toyota technicians say that 100,000 Ks you should replace that pump, because it is working flat out, whether the engine's running or not. So yeah, this car's got 300,000 Ks on it. It's quite a lot as far as the running train, like the drivetrain itself and the suspension and so on and so forth. It's up there. In saying that, the motor doesn't run all the time. So, it's probably, the motor itself has probably done 200,000+ Ks worth of work itself. So these engines run forever. The transmissions are really good. It's not a bad little car, and there's quite a lot of good cheap fixes. So anyway, I'll let you go. Thanks for checking it out. Hopefully this will help anyone who's stuck on the side of the road, and I'll catch you on the next one.